Chapter 7. Ruby at the Loft. On the other side of town, Ruby Garcia had agreed to meet with Granger. She was still living in Tobin's place, in the loft apartment above the Barnes Gallery in South of Market. The neighborhood was one of the oldest in the city, dating back to the 1870s. It had been called South Park then, laid out by a group of anti-abolitionists who built stately houses and staffed them with Chinese servants. Those old houses were now gone, and the neighborhood was filled with decaying industrial, converted warehouses with lofts upstairs and 4 lanes of traffic out front. Upstairs in Tobin's loft, the noise from that traffic seemed distant. Ruby Garcia sat on a stool across from Granger, regarding him warily. She had obviously been packing. Half-filled boxes and bags lay against the walls.
"Why are you going after Jimmy?"
she asked.
"Can't you see it was self-defense?"
"I wish I could," he said.
"Cynthia Charleston, Jimmy's attorney, she told me I didn't have to talk to you if I didn't want. She said I have no obligation to cooperate, that I can cut this off any time I please."
"Legally, that's true. I appreciate your taking the time."
"I figured the truth can only help Jimmy."
Her voice was tentative, as if she didn't quite believe what she said.
"That's why I'm talking to you."
"Yes," Granger said politely, and nothing more. Like most police officers, he knew that the best way to get someone to talk was to say nothing at all. Most people felt an almost desperate need to fill a silence, and he very much wanted to hear what she had to say. If Charleston had warned her about this meeting, then Ruby must have her own very strong reasons to talk to him. She wore a bright t-shirt and a pair of shorts, both stained with paint. On all sides they were surrounded by paintings, some of them still in progress. "That painting behind you, it's one of Tobin's?" Granger asked. He knew that it was and waited for her reaction. The painting was something of a departure for Tobin, less realistic than his usual work. It showed a man rendered from several angles in the style of the Cubists. Receding in the background was another figure on a hilltop, laughing.
"Yeah, he calls it self-portrait. It's part of that series, The World is Burning. It was a big change in direction for him. Harsher colors, darker forms, more haunted."
"I see,"
"It was his best stuff."
she said flatly. "The World is Burning? Isn't that the series that debuted last winter? I heard they were all stolen." Ruby shook her head. Dark, unruly curls bounced along her shoulders.
"Not all of them. He brought a couple up to the loft, just the day before. That was one."
"Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions about the theft?" Granger said casually, as though he were just filling time, as though the subject wasn't vitally interesting to him. Ruby shrugged, taking the bait.
"All right. But I don't really know much about it."
"You were here when it happened, weren't you?"
"Yeah, but I didn't see anything. Nobody did. We came down one morning and somebody had broken in. They used a straight razor to cut the paintings right out of their frames, rolled them up, and walked right out the door, I guess."
Granger looked puzzled. "Wasn't there an alarm system? I thought I saw some company stickers downstairs on the front door."
"Yeah, but it's not so great. Sometimes there are false alarms, other times it won't ring at all."
She brought up her legs so that she sat cross-legged on the stool, looking suddenly like a vulnerable girl. "Was anything else taken?"
"No."
she said. Granger frowned again. Why would someone steal Tobin's artwork? I mean, it's not like a TV set or jewelry. It wouldn't be easy to fence. Besides, how much would it be worth?
"It's worth a lot,"
Ruby retorted. "Those paintings, Zach had stickers on them, you know. The cheapest was $5,000.
Yeah, it may not be a Sony or shit like that, but a real collector, someone who knows modern art, they'd paid a lot for an original Tobin.
Okay, Granger said. I'll take your word for it. You know more about it than I do. But there was insurance, wasn't there? Ruby grimaced.
I guess. But it takes time, you know, all that kind of stuff. I don't know what happened to the money, or even if they sent it yet or what.
She grabbed her ankle and bent forward over it.
Listen, see, Jimmy, he said I'm an artist, and I gotta pay attention to that. I mean, not get all tied up with gallery stuff and all the other shit. 'Cause an artist gotta make art, no matter what.
Gallery stuff? Granger echoed.
Oh yeah.
Ruby said intently.
Listen, I know I wasn't supposed to pay attention, but everybody knows about it. How gallery owners and dealers and stuff, they just rip off artists. I mean, you hang around at the Institute, you hear all kinds of stories. Owners, jeez. I mean, like they tell you all this stuff they're going to do for you. Like hang your stuff out front or in a special place. Or how they're gonna guarantee you money. I mean, they'll say anything just to get you to sign an agreement.
An agreement?
Yeah, a consignment agreement.
Ruby said.
That's what happens with artists and dealers or galleries. You sign this agreement that says you'll let this guy handle your artwork, and they're supposed to do all this stuff in return, but they don't gotta, you know?
They don't? Granger said. But the agreement.
Oh yeah, sure.
Ruby said sarcastically. She gestured with her free hand, the other still clutching her ankle.
What are you gonna do, sue? Where are you gonna get the money to do that? Especially if the dealer won't pay you. And that's what a lot of them do, you know. They sell your stuff and don't pay you for it until you make a real stink. Or there was this one guy around here. He'd start a gallery, sign up a bunch of artists, sell their stuff, then he'd file for bankruptcy, and the artist would never see a dime.
She bent forward.
And you know what?
She demanded in a large whisper. Granger also bent forward, shaking his head.
His brother would go buy the gallery assets from the bankruptcy judge, you know? Like they were partners.
She sat back.
Dealers are scum,
she said with finality. Granger looked fascinated. In fact, he really was. What about Zach Barnes? He said. Was he scum too? Ruby, looking suddenly nervous, dropped her legs.
No, not really,
she muttered. Tobin said he and Zach were partners. Ruby's mouth twisted.
No, they weren't. Not like real business partners, they weren't.
Then I'm confused, Granger said. What was their relationship? Do you know? Ruby said she did, or at least she knew part of the story. Barnes and Tobin had met at college in Santa Barbara. Barnes, the transplanted Berkeley boy from the upper middle class background. Tobin, a military brat whose longest stay growing up had been in New Orleans. Both interested in art, both ready to shock their families by taking up careers that would almost guarantee financial disaster, and together, rising above that gloomy prediction. Tobin's artwork had hit at just the right time, and Barnes' genius for promotion had made sure the hit stuck. For more than 10 years, the two seemed to represent the ideal relationship between best-selling artist and best-selling dealer.
But they were never partners,
Ruby said positively.
They always had a consignment agreement.
What about recently? Granger said. Weren't there some financial problems?
No,
Ruby said.
People liked Jimmy's work. Yeah, his stuff was selling, no problem.
Granger didn't respond. He had taken a preliminary look at the bookkeeping files on Barnes' desk, files indicating that, financially, matters between him and Tobin were pretty desperate. Then along came a thief to steal Tobin's paintings and an insurance payoff to save the day. You were here the night the paintings were stolen, right? Any friendliness on Ruby's part disappeared, replaced by distrust.
I already told you I was in bed. What's this got to do with Zach's murder?
I'm just curious. Where was Tobin?
He was in bed too. He was on his side, and I was on mine. At least at first.
Then what happened?
Do you really want to know?
She gave him a sly smile. Ruby was playing games, he realized. He stood and sauntered over to a pile of half-finished canvases. Unlike Tobin's, these were obviously rough, the work of a talented beginner. Color and energy fairly vibrated off the canvas. Yours? Granger said. I like them.
Yeah, that and $1 will get you a coffee,
she said, but she stopped smiling.
You gonna talk about my artwork, or the theft, or are you gonna talk about Zach?
He turned back to her. You think Jimmy's innocent?
I know he is.
Then what happened downstairs the day Zach died?
Like Jimmy said, it was self-defense.
Her voice rose, as if for emphasis. You were fond of Zach, weren't you?
This is really hard for me to talk about.
She said, almost whispering.
Jimmy is not a perfect person, but that didn't make it right for me to go and sleep with his partner. It's just like my mom used to say, I'm only always thinking of myself. If it hadn't been for me, none of this would have happened. Zach would still be alive. Jimmy wouldn't hate me. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't even be in jail. And Yvonne would still have a husband.
Granger waited in silence. When she didn't go on, he said, Did Jimmy ever found out about the affair? Another long silence, before she said,
Zachary wrote me a long note after we slept together. Simon Lee, the gallery assistant, had just delivered it to me when Jimmy came in and took it.
Granger looked surprised. Did Jimmy usually take your mail? She shrugged and looked away. After a moment, Granger said, What did Jimmy do then?
He got mad. I only got to read the top, just a little bit.
She bit her lip, then looked at him sideways.
Charleston said that you had a copy from Zach's computer, and you were going to use it in your case.
We might, if it's relevant. Granger took a moment to thank his stars that Charleston already knew that they had the whole letter. Tell me, Ruby, when Tobin found out about you and Zach, what else did he do?
Nothing.
Did he yell?
A little.
What did he say?
I don't remember.
Did he hit you?
He didn't hurt me.
But she winced as she said it, and let her hand move, as if unconsciously, to massage her ribs. Did you hear him threaten Zach?
No.
What else did he say?
Nothing. It wasn't a big deal, I told you.
Not a big deal?
No.
Granger did not believe her. Ruby had been on the verge of letting go her loyalty to Tobin, but she couldn't take that final step. Ruby, the circumstantial evidence says your boyfriend killed Zachary Barnes. Can you show me otherwise? She did not answer. Instead, she reached down and held her ankle. I don't want to prosecute an innocent man, Granger said. Ruby shrugged.
If I knew something, I would tell you.
How about the murder weapon? You ever see either man with a gun? She met him straight on, with those brown eyes of hers, a little tearful, a little smug. She had let go of her ankle, and the leg was swinging now, as though the rocking of her body on that stool was supposed to be some kind of answer in itself. The murder weapon was registered to Darrell Barnes, Zachary's cousin, Granger said. Did Tobin have access to that man's house or to his guns?
Please leave me alone. I don't want to talk anymore.
Did your boyfriend have access to any gun?
I said leave me alone!
She said angrily, and buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. Granger let out his breath and put his hand on her shoulder. She didn't look at him, but she didn't shrug him away either. He kept his hand there for a minute. Then he put his business card on the table. "Call me when you're ready," he said. On the way out, he happened to notice Tobin's painting again, the self-portrait. He figured Tobin had started hanging out with Ruby because she was attractive, yes, but also because she was younger. Maybe he thought he could manipulate her. She hadn't been so easy, though, and that must have bothered him, in the same way that the many-sided man in the self-portrait seemed bothered by that laughter from the tiny figure on the hill.